A previous Carroll County master plan, known as Pathways, was a so-called smart growth scheme. It was written by liberals who see our beautiful rural neighborhoods as a problem they need to fix. That plan demanded low-cost housing and office parks everywhere and would have turned Carroll County into another Gaithersburg. I opposed Pathways and government run amok. We thought Pathways was dead. But in 2012, my opponent formed a secretive work group called Carroll 2030, which advocates the same government socialist planning schemes as Pathways. The work group participants were handpicked by my opponent. The meetings were not advertised to the public, nor was there any way for you or I to participate.
So, let's take a look at his vision for your future in his 2030 plan.
First, the plan calls for adequate, affordable housing for all socio and economic levels. Ladies and gentlemen, the people of Carroll County have plowed this field already and spoken loud and clear. They don't want subsidized low-cost housing forced into Eldersburg and Sykesville. Second, the plan calls for adequate and advanced transportation. This can only mean state-financed mass transit, and it will connect to Baltimore. The citizens of District 5 have already clearly stated they don't want expensive public transportation coming into our county and bringing with it the crime they experienced in Owings Mills. And third, 2030 also wants you to run 80% on alternative energy for homes, cars, and businesses. Now that's a fairy tale for you. The cost of such a scheme is unimaginable, and technology to even accomplish such a goal is not even on the horizon. We cannot sustain our current lifestyle without workable energy resources. All of these liberal visions are part of a more serious problem. The 2030 plan was done behind closed doors. Mr. Howard is establishing a form of shadow government that is making plans for your future without your knowledge, without your participation, and without your permission. To make matters worse, when I examined the participants in his 2030 work group, 21 of the 28 participants received their paycheck or funding from county government. And one member who receives money from the commissioners was recruited by Howard to endorse him on a campaign kickoff video. Is that even ethical? You know, the answer to that. His work group is self-serving, secretive, and ignorant of the values of District 5 voters. Carroll 2030 is of secretive government, by secretive government, and for secretive government, which always means more taxes for everyone. Howard has been claiming that his work group means nothing. Really? Did 28 people spend the past 2 years organizing a meaningless plan? Did they spend time, county resources, county personnel, and all that effort for nothing? I would ask Doug Howard, why did the Board of Commissioners waste 2.5 hours listening to the many 2030 cluster leaders give their presentation in open session this past March 6th? Spending more taxpayer dollars and participating in a charade you call nothing? Why did you do this, Doug? This actually is unethical. It has created conflicts of interest, it violates open meeting laws, and it renders this incumbent unfit for office. Our citizens do not want a rogue commissioner secretly re-engineering our community. As your commissioner, I will not tolerate secret plans to urbanize District 5. As your commissioner, I will continue to oppose anyone that tries to force their covert planning vision on you without your knowledge and against your will. Regarding the Howard-picked participants in these groups, I do want to clarify that they are all upstanding, respected members of the Carroll community and certainly believed their work group were doing legitimate work. Unfortunately, they were manipulated by Howard and his county-paid assistant. When a public official such as Howard brings together members of our community to make plans that will be brought to the government, in this case, the Board of Commissioners, to be considered for official action, he creates a public body that is subject to state open meeting laws. Howard just talking about these work groups in open session and claiming that they are not public bodies, but private work groups, does not suffice. Let me quote from the Open Meetings Act handbook where it gives an example. If the mayor of a town appoints a committee of citizens to make recommendations about the sitting of a new playground, such a committee would be called a public body. And if, as in this example, the committee is carrying out an adversary function, the act would apply. Well, that describes Howard's work groups as public bodies quite precisely. State law mandates that meetings of public bodies be open to public view or advertised to the general public in advance, and an agenda for the meeting must be made available to the public at or prior to the meeting, and minutes must be kept and made available to the public in a timely manner. It appears that none of these requirements were met in any of the work groups which Howard created. All of these important open meeting requirements exist to make certain that public officials do not do the work of the people behind closed doors. Open meetings laws require that the general public be allowed to know what their government is doing so that they can participate or object if desired. Unfortunately, Doug Howard and his assistant met none of these requirements when conducting any of his work groups, like the solid waste work group, the nonprofit group, the veterans group, or the 2030 group. But they have all been mentioned by Howard to the other commissioners in open sessions and make recommendations to the commissioners, and most of those recommendations have been adopted by the board, so the fact they have performed an advisory function cannot be disputed. Particularly troubling, though, was when Howard attempted to set up a Common Core work group, and the people who were asked to participate requested the Board of Commissioners officially sanction the group and comply with open meeting laws. Howard ended the group. At least I think he did. However, it is hard to be certain when these groups meet behind closed doors whether they announce their existence or not. And isn't that really the problem? What a shame that Howard cares more about manipulating closed groups to serve his political desires than protecting the good name and reputation of respected community leaders. What a shame that District 5 constituents have an incumbent who cares nothing about proper government process or real community participation.